Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So over the past year or so in the gaming industry, there's been a lot of reaping and sowing, both good and bad. And a lot of games that pandered and virtue signaled and spent more time caring about what screechers on Twitter might think, well, they failed. We also saw some examples of games that just wanted to provide a good experience with appealing character designs, and they succeeded. And one of those games that released last year was Stellar Blade, released back in April of that year. And it had enormous levels of success, and it was a huge hit for Shift Up and Sony. Now, here we are in the year 2025 in June, and they just had their PC release. Now, there is plenty of journalists who are still fuming about this game and doing everything in their power to kill the hype. You can see PC Games N here giving a paltry 6 out of 10, saying this game is basically very underwhelming and boring. But of course, even IGN had to eventually admit that this PC release was a massive, massive success. The PC version of Stellar Blade is already Sony's biggest single-player Steam launch ever. And the numbers look insane. Right now in the middle of the afternoon, a few days into the PC release, you can see over 140,000 in-game PC players, despite the 6 out of 10 from that previous journalist. The Steam review percentage is 92%. If you look at the charts, it's actually gaining momentum over the past couple of days. All of these numbers just fly in the face of all the excuses various shills have provided for other games. We heard this with Dragon Age the Veilguard and Assassin's Creed Shadows, where Steam DB charts, they don't matter. They're not real numbers because they're releasing the game on multiple platforms, so these numbers aren't reliable. And of course, both of those games failed financially and really just proved the people relying on the charts correct. But here, this game releases on PC after releasing on console over a year ago and has numbers that crushed those two previous games that I just mentioned. On top of that, like I said, a year later, think about a different example with Star Wars Outlaws that had a Steam release very shortly after its initial release, which a lot of people were surprised by. That wasn't seemingly the plan. But even then, after a much shorter window between the releases, their Steam numbers were in the few thousand. Okay, and that's despite being a major AAA release from a beloved franchise. Now, of course, these numbers seem undeniable. Even the shills cannot deny this. The journalists have to accept the reality that this PC launch was a major success. So what did they do now? They seethe. Here's Vice taking a break from their Waypoint journalists slandering VTubers to make this banger, saying, Stellar Blade PC launch breaks Steam sales records thanks to its thirsty fan base. Stellar Blade is breaking numbers, largely being fueled by its thirsty fan base. Yeah, largely by thirsty players. That's what Vice has to say. And of course, the people at Shift Up disagree. They think the biggest reason for the success is its combat. Now, of course, nobody is blind here. The appealing character designs and the appealing outfits contained in Stellar Blade definitely contributed to its success. A lot of people are happy to see it, but that is not the end-all be-all of a game success like this. Clearly, a lot of people really enjoyed the gameplay and the combat. Clearly, to minimize all of this just to appealing character designs and thirsty players is a gigantic cope. We've seen other games lean heavily into appealing character designs with a lot of fan service, perhaps even more than Stellar Blade. And one example is The First Descendant, which right now, despite being a live service game that's free to play, has numbers that have really floundered. They got off to a really good start, but things changed really quickly, and they really haven't recovered in any sort of a significant way because the gameplay just doesn't connect with people as much as Stellar Blade did. But things would get worse. PC Gamer is very upset about this, probably more upset about what's going on with the PC release more than anyone else. Okay, they came up with this saying, Gooner Game of the Year, Stellar Blade's mods are 41% smut, ensuring gamers will never see the light of heaven. Don't you love it when PC Gamer tells you you're never going to see the light of heaven for playing Stellar Blade? And the way they describe this game is ridiculous. The Gooner Game. Okay? This person did some work with Grok here to compare the number of intercourse scenes in all of these games versus the Gooner games like Stellar Blade. Dragon Age: The Veilguard, 7. Mass Effect 3, 6 to 8. Cyberpunk 2077, 4 to 6. And so on and so forth. Baldur's Gate, Dragon Age Inquisition, God of War. And then Stellar Blade at the bottom with 0. Goose Egg. And yet this is the Gooner game. Not Dragon Age: The Veilguard, nothing else on this list. It's just Stellar Blade. Because, well, these journalists have a massive bias. They just don't like this game and what it stands for, just being a product designed for gamers, and they're just seething about its success. Now, going to the article itself, it gets even more ridiculous as you read through. So they say stuff like this. Stellar Blade finally hit PC 2 days ago, giving everyone a chance to do whatever it is this game is actually about. Unfortunately, no one knows what that is because the entirety of discourse surrounding it is about the main character's butt. Are you joking? You're the one limiting this entire game to its fan service and the appeal of its character designs. This is not something that no one knows what it's about. A lot of people do, including millions of people. They know because they played through the game, and clearly PC Gamer hasn't bothered. They don't know what this game's about. They're just relying on a bunch of weirdos on Twitter who are upset about this game. Now, going down here, they keep seething, and they say, by intense scientific calculus counting, fully 96 of the 234 mods available for this game, 41% that currently exists for Stellar Blade, are marked as adult. And frankly, some of the ones that are not marked as adult are probably not safe for work. How do you feel about Eve Feet Hands? Good? Would you discuss that with your grandparents over Christmas dinner? No. Why would you talk about not safe for work content and mods for this game with your grandparents over Christmas? What a stupid thing to say. Would you talk about this article with your grandparents at Christmas? I don't think so. And I also think there's other articles that this person has wrote that they definitely would not be sharing with their grandparents over Christmas. Look at the name here. Joshua Wallens. Well, let's look back to September of 2024, not even a year ago. They made an entire article about Baldur's Gate 3's bare intercourse scene and how important this was to spreading the message of the game. I kid you not. Would you share this with your grandparents at Christmas dinner? I don't think so, dude. And you're a massive hypocrite. This is the person telling you you're not going to see the pearly gates because you played Stellar Blade, but then they act like this not even a year ago. It's complete hypocrisy. Everyone can see this, and this is why games journalists are a complete and utter joke. Now, there's some more people upset about the success of Stellar Blade. Some people are still coping on Steam, and they're trying to leave negative reviews. Look at some of these. Let's start here. The male gaze and objectification of women. Eve's hypersexualized appearance, skin-tight outfits, exaggerated body proportions, and voyeuristic camera work are a major selling point in the game and reflects a design rooted in the male gaze. When a woman's strength is constantly filtered through her sex appeal, her power becomes conditional, and it's acceptable only if it's visually pleasing to a presumed male gaze. Ultimately, Stellar Blade reinforces the idea that women should appeal to the male gaze to be in the spotlight. Again, I always love when people bring up the camera work. You control the camera, buddy. Okay, if you're using it in that way, that's on you. But people like appealing designs. This is not shocking. And also, guess what? It's not just men who enjoy these designs. Women do too. And I love people like this who speak on behalf of women. They basically say, there's no way you actually like this game, clearly, because it's so designed for the male gaze, which is so backwards. It's like peak male feminist energy. We see it all the time. But here's another one saying, mod to make it less sexual. Laugh, throw clowns, etc. I've heard great things about the gameplay. I'm a huge fan of this genre. I would love to play, but I genuinely can't enjoy or get into a game as blatantly sexual as this. This person wants a mod to tone down this game. Just buy another game. If this is too much for you, if this offends you morally or whatever, that's fine. But no one's going to make a mod to tone this down for you. Just be realistic here. But there were some more talks about the mods for this game. Apparently, the Shift Up CEO has shared his view on mods, basically saying a lot of them are still pretty limited And he basically is challenging these modders to do better, to go further, I guess. And he's looking forward to more mods that not just target outfits and things like that, but also change the way that the game is enjoyed. So this is a pretty healthy reaction, in my opinion, especially when so many developers just go crazy over mods. They get so angry. We've seen multiple companies try to do their best to take down mods, to discourage people from making mods, to, of course, alter their single player experience that's not hurting any other player other than themselves. But anyways, people are also trying to downplay these numbers. You can see the journalist here, Paul Tassi, talked about him pretty recently. He said, the Stellar Blade curve is interesting as you can see just how Asia-focused it is. Prime gaming time in the West is pretty much its daily low point. And then they say in parentheses, tweet screenshot prevention. I am not saying this is bad. Then why are you bringing it up? This is such an obvious point. Everyone understands this game sold the best in Asia. That's where the studio is. Like, of course it's going to sell the best there. We went through the same exact thing with Black Myth Wukong, where people try to downplay, millions of concurrent players by saying, well, it peaked pretty low when the East went to bed. Yeah, no kidding, dude. That's the region that they focused on the most. Duh. This is just a stupid, petty thing to bring up that's just trying to downplay these numbers that are incredibly impressive, even in the West. Now, of course, Paul is someone who has tried to downplay this game from the get-go back in last year, saying Stellar Blade is now the highest user-scored PS5 game ever, which is a bit excessive. Why? It's not up to you. It's up to the players to decide that. But now they've come full circle, saying 10 things I wish I knew when I started Stellar Blade 2025 PC Edition, where he is largely praising the game. It's pretty funny. He also shared an article from Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg, sharing the reasons why Dragon Age the Veilguard failed. And it's very interesting to see the comparison points between Stellar Blade and everything that happened with that versus Dragon Age the Veilguard, which is always some weird set of comparisons, but I guess, like I said, a lot of people make excuses for the Steam DB numbers of Veilguard when it came out, and now they're not making any sort of comment about that when it comes to Stellar Blade. Now we have, of course, Jason Schreier, who wrote this article that's being shared, and he was one who infamously tried to preemptively spike the proverbial football on this one, where he said, go woke, go top the charts, showing the first day results of Dragon Age the Veilguard, and at the time it was 58,000 concurrent players, where someone said, there's no way you genuinely liked this turd, where he said, I actually don't like the game very much, but I do like seeing you chuds get dunked on. This is a full-grown man unironically calling people chuds on social media in order to dunk on them with a game that ultimately failed and caused massive layoffs over at BioWare. But this is the article itself. This is a screenshot. I am not giving any support to Bloomberg. So you can see inside the Dragon Age debacle that gutted EA's BioWare studio and basically said they went through 10 years of development turmoil. And here's a summation, some of the highlights of that article, saying there was a lot of immense pressure to succeed after the failure of Anthem, which, yeah, I could see that, as well as Andromeda too. The original concept was a small single-player experience, then EA forced a pivot to a multiplayer live service format. Creative director resigned over the shift, and then you can see Anthem's failure in 2019 raised internal doubts about repeating mistakes. The pandemic just complicated things. In 2020, the project was abruptly pivoted back to single-player, which, man, if it was a live service multiplayer, dude, can you imagine how much worse things could have been? But of course, the team only had 18 months to overhaul the structure and rewrite the story. Tight timelines, multiple delays, feedback from the alpha testing in 2022 pointed to a lack of impactful narrative decisions. BioWare brought in a second team to help finish the game. We already kind of knew that. The cultural clashes over the team caused a lot of issues. Some of the Mass Effect leaders rewrote and added new scenes, including the game's emotional finale. Dragon Age leads were frustrated, denied resources, and excluded from key meetings. The online multiplayer version's snarky tone felt outdated. Concerns it would resemble Forspoken led to last-minute dialogue rewrites. The dialogue was actually worse originally. That's pretty hard to believe, okay? But looking at BioWare's future, contributes around 5% of EA's annual revenue. EA primarily profits from sports and shooter games, and yada, yada, yada. So you get it. There was a lot going on, and honestly, a lot of it was just internal confusion, changing of the direction of this game multiple times, reverting giant pivots, like going from single player to multiplayer live service and then going back. That's obviously pretty hard to deal with, and bringing in multiple teams to try to finish this and tweak the dialogue as much as humanly possible. But I think a lot of this stuff talks about the internal issues, but doesn't talk about the optics. This game just had the worst optics ever. Everyone knows this who's being honest about it. It got dismissed as a woke game, and the dialogue and the direction of the story was impacted by clearly the agenda of some people working at BioWare, or at least some of the people. And the numbers of this, you just don't explain this away with all the excuses we've heard. And you can just look at the numbers. I mean, an instant drop off. And again, this just doesn't explain everything. Just looking at the article, clearly the optics of this were really bad. And of course, there's explanations for this. Some people brought up that YouTubers designating this game as woke was one of the reasons it failed. And Paul Tassi said, it's easy to push back on this, but when the woke debates consume literally an entire online marketing campaign, that can in fact be damaging. And yes, Asmongold trashing something does actually matter now, like it or not. Not that you should cater to that, but it's where we are. I disagree. I think people like Asmongold have an impact, but at the end of the day, a lot of people, not everyone watches Asmongold. Like, he's very popular, but like, you have to understand the giant normie market for a Dragon Age IP. A lot of them did not see his review or any review from YouTubers. And on top of that, we were told over and over again that YouTubers and anyone with a platform criticizing this game, irrelevant. You didn't matter. And now all of a sudden, people like Asmongold are so powerful, they control markets. And down here, someone basically says, I disagree. And he replies by saying, it is not a clear majority, it's a loud minority. No game fails purely because it's woke. Not this, not Concord, or whatever you're going to reference. All of these games also have real issues, separate from all of that, obviously. And he's getting clowned on and criticized pretty hard for this, trying to downplay this stuff and say it's the loud minority that's causing games to fail. Where is the silent majority? Where are they? Because if they existed, they would show up. This is not some gigantic leap of faith to go out and buy a video game you like. If you're interested in, you're hearing some negative things from a supposed loud minority, you're still going to go and buy it. I'm sorry. Why would you let a loud minority affect you? It just seems odd. And honestly, the loud minority has always been the activists on Twitter, the woke people, the people trying to push agenda and control what these games are allowed to do or not to do in order to serve their agenda. That's the loud minority, and it's been proven over and over again with games that try to cater to them. This is so obvious. I don't understand how anyone is trying to pretend like this is the reality when it's really the opposite. But of course, Stellar Blade's got an amazing thing here. Shift Up got an amazing thing here. And anything that they're going to be working on next, everyone's super excited. But Sony, what are we doing? Sony now remains committed to diverse and resilient live service games, including forthcoming marathon and fair games, despite high-profile failures. Yes, they see what happens to games like Concord. They see how these live service games struggle. They see how games like Stellar Blade succeed. But they choose the wrong options. There's a right option and a wrong one here from a common sense standpoint, and they're sticking with marathon and fair games, which are going to struggle mightily. It's rare you can just look at stuff and say, yep, that's not going to do well. And that's an example of that. That's what people said when they saw Concord. And guess what? That's what people are saying when they see Marathon and Fair Games. And the fact they're sticking with the stuff, insane. But anyways, not to diminish the great day or great week for Stellar Blade, but that's some of the other stuff going on and some of the people fighting back at the success of this game and trying to diminish it. But for now, it's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.